Hello, my name is Visklugers and welcome to Armored Warfare, and today we'll be looking at the AMX 10P, which is a Tier 3 armored fighting vehicle. And we will be comparing it pretty closely to the XM 800T, which is pretty much the closest comparison, since they're both fast armored fighting vehicles and have fast firing autocannon with very similar statistics. Now, beginning with hit points. The AMX has 820 hit points, which is more than the XM 800T has. And the armor profile is horrendously bad, but it is better than in the XM 800. So you can, with some luck, absorb some HE damage, unlike in the XM 800, which has like no armor at all. I believe it has 14 millimeters at the maximum. So yeah, even if you slightly blow towards the XM, it's just gonna get annihilated. But the AMX theoretically can negate at least just a little bit of HE damage, but pretty much doesn't have any armor to work with either. So moving on to mobility, it is very fast vehicle. Top speed is 64.8 kilometers per hour, which is very fast indeed, and the acceleration is also extremely good at 2.85 seconds. So the overall maneuverability, I have given it a good-ish result. It feels good. It's not superbly too fast, so that it feels more casual, and you quite often do not go too far ahead of your allies. But if the situation demands it, you can go really fast. Now the vision. 451 meters of view range, which is also really good, but comparing it to the other armored fighting vehicles, it is the worst. So that is a bummer. The camo value is also pretty good at 0.33, which is the average, but the XM 800T with superb 0.39 looks a lot better in comparison. Now the firepower is pretty interesting. In comparison to the XM 800T, it has alpha damage of 26, which means it's 3 more than the XM 800T has. And the penetration is also better at 81, so it's 6 millimeters of penetration more. And the magazine is identical at 45 rounds per clip. And the total DPM is ludicrously high. It is easily the highest on tier 3, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's the highest of tier 4 and even at tier 5. I'm not exactly sure about tier 5, but at least it's the best on tier 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now the rate of fire is exactly the same as in the XM. It's 300 rounds per minute, which means 5 rounds per second. Now the reload is also identical at 6 seconds. And the accuracy is 0.12. It is the most accurate of all armored fighting vehicles. The aiming time is also the best at 2 seconds. So it's very accurate and it's very fast to aim. And the turret traverse is also the best of the armored fighting vehicles in its tier. 56.15. It's just ridiculously good. It spins around like a rocket. Now the gun depression isn't the best though. 8.5 degrees at the front and 6 at the back. So it's not the worst, but in comparison to the XM 800T, it's almost half of its frontal gun depression, which pretty much means that you really have to work with the environment more, because you can't point your gun down as much as you would like to. The 6 degrees of gun depression on the back isn't that bad. The XM800T only has 2 degrees more, so it's not that big of a difference, but at the front it is a pretty big deal. But all in all, 8.5 degrees of gun depression is not bad by any stretch of the imagination. At the armored fighting vehicles levels, though, it is a characteristic that is quite often very good. But 8.5, it's pretty good, it's workable. Now, let's summarize this vehicle. I feel like this vehicle is more like a beginner-friendly and more casual version of the XM800T. It's a bit bigger, so it's a bit bigger, it's a bit slower to accelerate. It doesn't have that insane camo, and it doesn't have that insane view range. So it's like it's a bit dumbed down version of the XM. It's not as extreme as the XM800T is. Like, you really can't get spotted and you really have to be fast and so on and so on. In this tank you can have some errors. You have more health, you have more armor and so on. You can take a little bit punishing in comparison to the XM800T. And the gun is also a lot better. Well, I say a lot, but it is surprisingly much better. I just realized that why I like this tank so much when I started to really compare the statistics, because I didn't feel like that, oh hell yeah, I love this tank, but it just always felt very like natural and enjoyable to play this tank. Because the gun really works. The gun really works because the 6 seconds of reload is just really short, especially after playing a lot of World of Tanks. 6 seconds just feels like nothing. And the alpha damage is not a lot better, but really, when we're talking about like 23 and 26 points of damage, it actually starts to stack up quite much. And the penetration is also a value you will notice. The 75mm of penetration is quite bad. If you're shooting at tier 2 vehicles, yeah, most of the time you'll get through. Except when you're facing main battle tanks frontally. But anything other than that, it's pretty much there's not a lot of problem. But when you start to face tier 4s and even 5s, you start to have a really hard time. And the 81mm, well, it's not a huge difference, but it always helps. And this is why I personally placed the Advanced MRS Mark 1 into the retrofit slot to normalize some of the angling when the shells hit the enemy tank, so it's just a little bit easier to get a penetration. Now, you will face the same problem as in the XM800T, because while reloading, should I reload now when I have fired like half of the shots from the magazine, or should I just expend the whole magazine? But really, it's not a huge deal of it's not a huge problem, because it's only 6 seconds. So even if someone rushes you, you're pretty surely going to be able to reload it very fast and then engage again. But the accuracy is quite a bit better. 0.12 is really accurate. And the XM has only, it's not really bad, but 0.15, which is okay. But 0.12 is really good. And the 2 seconds of aiming time is also really welcome. So the problem with the XM is that if you are trying to engage in a bit longer engagement, so that the distance is like at medium ranges, so you'll make like 3, 4, maybe 6 shots, and then you have to wait like a second and then make another small burst and wait a second so that your shots may remain accurate. Now, the AMX has a huge edge over this, so I quite constantly just kept pouring fire. Of course, sometimes I feel like, yeah, I need to make small pauses to remain really accurate, but this tank, it's not that big of a problem. You pretty much are accurate all the time, and you can respond very quickly to changing situations. And all in all, I feel like that this vehicle is just more user friendly, as in the XM800T you have to be like, you have to have a little bit of a taste of blood in your mouth to really be competitive in PvP, and to some degree even in PvE if you're not playing on easy difficulty. The AMX, it's not an easy vehicle, and in PvP you will be obliterated if you're not very careful, but it's a little bit easier. And I feel like the strong point of this vehicle is in PvE, because there will be a lot of tank destroyers and armored fighting vehicles and light tanks that does not have a great deal of armor, since the 81mm of penetration, while being better than 75, it's not very good, is it? You know, if the penetration would be over 100mm, then it would be enough to frontally engage some main battle tanks, but 81mm is so low that even the Leopard 1 can give you a little bit of problems frontally. You can penetrate the frontal plate pretty easily, but if the Leopard starts to angle it and so on, you will start to struggle a bit. And the Leopard 1 is quite notoriously badly armored. So all in all, I really feel like everyone should try this tank, especially if they are not, especially because it's only a tier 3 vehicle and it doesn't take a really long time to get here. But let's take a quick look at the tree. Where does it lead to? The BMD-1 is a vehicle that starts to get missiles, so it's pretty fast, has decent gun, has guided missiles, so it's quite workable. The BMD-2 is quite much of the AMX 10P style of gameplay with an autocannon fitted to it, which is something that I'm really looking forward into. The Bradley, well, same stuff, pretty much, a little bit better armor, with a lot of new kinda armor plating and different alloys to give heat shells and missiles and a high explosive a lot of troubles to actually penetrate it, even though on the paper it doesn't have a lot of armor. The BMD-4, I have no idea what the gun in this vehicle is, but it feels like a big, quite troll vehicle and extremely fast as well. Now at tier 8 we have the Warrior, which is pretty much like a Bradley from what I have seen, but it doesn't seem to be very special. But what has been pretty special is the Ramka 99. This vehicle is filled with all kinds of different armor, reactive high explosive armor and all sorts of manner stuff. Really devastating opponent, 4 missile launchers, 2-barreled autocannon and highly mobile. It is a really frightening adversary. And personally, I have had a little bit of a taste of it, because I have driven the BMPT Terminator, which is quite like it. It's not exactly the same. It has less armoring and worse weapons, but the main idea is the same, because the Remka is based on the BMPT Terminator, and it is a really extremely fun tank to drive. It's one of those, I don't know is how competitive is it, but it's at least really fun tank to drive, I feel. So that is what you will get when going through the armored fighting vehicle branch and starting with the AMX 10P, a tank that I personally really like, and I feel like everyone should give it a shot, because all the reasons I have given. I would like to receive some of your thoughts on the AMX 10P. Did you like it? Do you agree what I said? And what do you think about the Shishkin Armored Fighting Vehicle 3 in general? Alright, so thank you so much for watching, and I hope I see you in the next video.